Hello, welcome back to the Your Everyday Strength podcast. My name is Josh Sternberg. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining me. It's a second solo episode in a week straight, 2 weeks straight, 2 solo episodes. I'll be real. Locking in guests, booking times with grown adults is actually fucking way harder. I know I've already spoken about this before, but it really does highlight how hard it actually can be. It's been very interesting. Being a podcast host is very funny because you're trying to lock in times with certain people, and whether you're trying to get them to come in person or whether you're just trying to organize an online catch up, grown adults are fucking busy. We all know that. We all know everybody's busy in their day to day and everything like that as well. And with a lot of the people that I am trying to get on to speak to you guys, the audience, these are people who are very successful at what they do, generally speaking, and they're fucking busy people. So in the essence of just getting episodes put together, this is something that honestly, it's probably been an episode that's long overdue, but it's taken me a little bit of time to work my way through it. I have a lot of notes on this episode today, and it's essentially surrounding purpose, finding your purpose and losing it along the way. We're all taught from a young age that purpose is something you just find. You just find what you're good at, or you find what your purpose in life is. And I think it's a little bit misdirected because so many people feel purposeless. They don't really understand why they're here, what they're doing. And I can tell you right now, speaking from personal experience, I have found my purpose. I have lost it along the way. I have been confused about what I believed my purpose actually was. And it's been something that I've been really sitting with, especially over the last month and a bit with turning 30 and just seeing the direction of my life over this last 6 months and where I want it to go and what I want to do and all the rest of it. And kind of just coming back to what actually is my purpose? What is it that actually drives me to continue to move forward every single day? Because there would probably be times where I would say, coaching is my purpose, when in reality, coaching is merely a vessel for me to deliver my purpose. Coaching isn't the purpose. It is just one means of delivery. This podcast, for example, I could have sat there and said, this podcast is my purpose in life. But I don't necessarily think it's the podcast exclusively. I think it is just utilizing the podcast as a vessel of delivery, of a vessel of my purpose. Because when it all boils down to it, realistically speaking, I've come to the realization, or not necessarily come to the realization, I think I've always known this, but I would say that my purpose is to use what I've lived through, what I've learned, and the person I'm continuing to become to help other people become stronger in every area of their life. For me, it's always been about helping people. I have always loved helping people from a young age. I started coaching kids AFL at 13. I was coaching under 8s. Throughout my entire high school years, I always loved helping people, whether that was through student mentoring programs, or whether that was being a part of leadership groups, or being involved with footy and Auskick and coaching and all of these different things along the way. The core essence of everything I've always loved has always come back to actually helping people, helping others. And I explored so many different avenues as I was, growing up and everything like that, that when it all boils down to it, that realistically is my purpose. Because at the end of the day, I wouldn't necessarily say that your career is your purpose. And I wouldn't say that your business is your purpose for the most part. I'd say the platform is not your purpose. These are all just vessels. These are all vessels of delivery, whether you have a social media platform, whether you have a business, whether it's your career. I wouldn't necessarily say these specific things are someone's purpose. I would say that they are vessels or vehicles for you to actually be able to deliver your purpose. Now, whatever that might be for you as an individual, whether that is helping people or whether that is just being of service to others or whatever your actual purpose is. So many different people have different motivators and everything like that in their life. It's just the contribution underneath all of them, realistically speaking. So it's also not something I think you just discover and just follow blindly for the rest of your life. I have found that throughout my entire life so far. I honestly think that it is more or less, it's something you can find, you can lose it, You mistake the vessel for the purpose. And sometimes life has to take a few things away from you before you actually remember what actually matters. This year, as I mentioned, I turned 30. Within that, I've been coaching for over 8.5 years. I've built businesses. I've moved states. I've moved states once. I moved from Queensland to Melbourne to Victoria. Experienced relationship breakdowns. I battled mental health issues. I became sober. I've watched my father face cancer. I've questioned my professional direction and begun building a podcast and getting into speaking work around a much broader definition of strength. When I first started as a PT, I would have probably said that my purpose is to PT. I would have said that PT is my purpose in life. And it probably wouldn't have necessarily been incorrect, but it would have really brushed over what it actually was that I was trying to get out of becoming a PT, or why I became a PT even in the first place, which at the end of the day is quite literally to help people. And I think it's really important to note as well that I still haven't figured out my life entirely. I'm 30 years old. I still have days where I question what I'm doing. I still have days where I feel directionless. I still have days where I feel, is this really my purpose? Am I really living up to my potential? Am I really doing the things I think I should be doing, or I know I should be doing? And I still don't have it all figured out. I know sometimes on the outside looking in, it can look like people have their lives together and they can look like they're really going in one direction, and that's exactly what's going to be happening for them. But I also think it's important to note that that's not always necessarily the case. And I'm very fortunate that I have spoken to countless business owners, countless professionals, countless sports fucking professionals, all of it. And it is actually a way more common theme than people would expect. We all know that social media and things like that is essentially just a highlight reel. And I've spoken about that a few times on different episodes. When we see people doing really, really well on social media, we're like, damn, that person has it all figured out. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly where they're going and all the rest of it. But when it actually boils down to it, oftentimes a lot of people don't. They're just kind of figuring shit out as they go along. And that is why I wanted to record this episode today, because it's something that this week really came to a head for me. It's been something that I think has been bubbling under the surface for quite a while, and it's just something that I felt called upon to speak about. Because this week, I will be completely honest, I quite literally said, I'm done with coaching. I was ready to call it a day. I was ready to pack it in. There's been a lot of external factors that led to me saying that. And before anyone gets ahead of themselves, I'm not quitting coaching. Yeah, I ain't fucking leaving old Leo to cap. But this week was quite literally the closest I have ever come to calling it a day on my career, because I essentially lost sight of that purpose. And I was mistaking the vessel of coaching as the purpose itself. And when we realize, and as I continue to go through this episode today, you'll understand what I mean a little bit more about some of these things. But I've really had to sit with it and be like, okay, where am I headed? Like, what am I actually doing here? Am I still doing this? Is my heart still invested in it? And then I had a few things happen. It's always the way this happens. I had a couple of things happen with some clients and everything like that. And I was like, fuck, no, I'm still here. This is still it for me. And I copped a message from a client that was so basic, so just it just wasn't a massive message, but I saw it and I just started crying. And I was like, no, brother, I'm still fucking here. This is still it for me. I still love this thing. And that really highlighted to me. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm sure I'm not alone when I talk about this sort of thing. And I'm sure I'm not alone with countless other business owners and things like that who have along the way just fucking felt lost, for lack of a better term. I think that that's a really good way to explain it. It's just sometimes you lose a little bit of sight as to like what you're here for and why you are here and why you're continuing to do these things. So before we get too deep into it, I want us to dial back a little bit, because before I did have a clear direction with where I was actually headed, honestly, it'd be school. We all know that school has this pressure upon us to actually have just life figured out. Like we need, back when I was in high school, we did this thing called set plan. It was in year 10, and it was essentially deciding what you want to do for the rest of your future. What pathway do you want to take? How are you going to get there? What does your future look like? What do your job prospects look like? All of it. And at that time, I wanted to be a secondary PE teacher. My goal in life was quite literally to go back and just be a PE teacher at the high school that I went to. And through just a few different life events unfolding, I ended up not following the OP pathway. And it eventually led me to just having to apply for the university diploma that I did, which was Diploma of Sports Management Surfing Studies on the Gold Coast, which is essentially what got me out of the Gold Coast, out of Townsville down to the Gold Coast. And that was the direction that I wanted to take with that, because that was essentially just like, okay, well, I don't really know where I'm headed. I don't really know what I'm doing. All I know is I don't want to be in Townsville. I need to figure out a way to get out of Townsville that can push me in some form of pathway forward. And that was essentially this course that I did. And it led me to just so many different avenues. Everything always happens exactly as it's meant to. And we don't necessarily know the path as to why or what's happening or anything like that. I just always knew, well, I needed to get out of Townsville. This was a way to get out of Townsville. And this was also a way to start tertiary education post high school. So just getting into university without actually having to do the OP pathway, which was at that point in time, it was a little bit harder. Now it's ATAR as far as I'm aware. But that was the direction I needed to go, and I needed to do it. So it's just, a lot of people can feel directionless. They do feel like they kind of don't really know exactly what they want to be doing in life. And then they kind of almost feel as if they're a bit of a failure. They feel like, I know myself personally that when I dropped from the English class that I was doing to what was essentially called English communication, because the teacher, my English teacher and myself had a falling out. So I just got out of the class and I was like, well, fuck you. To spite you, I'm going to go do this. And it was actually ended up, actually it was in spite of me. But again, it all led to the path that I went down in the end, which was exactly where I needed to be sitting here talking to you today. So it's just hard, because the amount of times that over the years I've just felt disconnected with where I was headed. It felt like I was taking detours. But at the end of the day, all of these detours were actually education that I needed for my future. So every single path that I've ever taken, there's been skills I've learned along the way, or there's been different aspects that have actually stuck with me for essentially my entire life. I could sit here and say the amount of serendipitous events that have occurred for me to end up exactly here where I am right now is insane. And I've always known that, the universe will come through whenever I need it to, and it will always have my back, even though sometimes things feel fucking shit and you don't really know where you're headed or what you're doing. You just kind of have to have this like blind faith that things are going to work out. And it's not a matter of just sitting there in your room having blind faith, being like, everything's going to work out. I don't need to do anything. You still need to take action. You still need to take aligned action. You still need to go and actually do things. Start jobs, start courses, study, fucking go do, try different things, travel, whatever it might be for you. You actually need to go and do these things to figure out, okay, well, that isn't what I want to be doing. And this isn't what I want to be doing. And this has elements of what I want to do, but it isn't necessarily exactly what I want to be doing. But you actually, the only way to be able to do that is by just doing something. You don't even need to do the thing. You just need to do something. And for me, when I started training at 18, 19 properly as a means of actually just helping myself work through the depression and the mental health issues I was facing at that time, I never knew that my life would turn out the way it did by just purely rocking up to a fucking Snap Fitness and buying an Optimum Nutrition bag of extreme mass. I didn't know that, but it did. And if I could look back and talk to the 18-year-old Josh who was on his bike riding to the Snap Fitness at Palm Beach to join, going to the local sup store, picking up his first bag of mass gainer, going home, and then never going back to the gym again for months. Probably he would just sit here and he wouldn't even believe what I would tell him right now, which is quite interesting. And the gym for me was one of the places that I sort of found a purpose. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that training was that purpose, but the gym was the first place where I had things that actually could become tangible. It was the first experience of turning up day in, day out, pushing yourself hard, going when you don't want to, trying, failing, and just continuing to try for years and years and years on end. It was the first place where I was actually able to, as an adult, really see the fruits of my labor pay off, starting to grow, starting to build, all of these different things. And then being able to carry that over into other aspects of my life along the way through university study and trying different careers and all of that sort of thing. Now, I was doing retail throughout the back end of high school. I then moved down to the Gold Coast. I was doing retail here as well. Whilst I was doing retail, I was off trying other jobs. I went and tried I thought I was really good at sales because I could talk to people and I loved talking to people. And I liked working in the retail aspect of things where I was talking to people and I was helping people, find clothes, even though it seems like such a non-thing. It's like your purpose in life isn't to help people find the right outfit, but there was undertones of like what my actual purpose was. And that was genuinely just helping people along the way. And as I sort of continued to work through that and I realized, okay, maybe this isn't necessarily my purpose. I'll go and try other things. And I went and did door-to-door sales, which I fucking hated. That sucked. I did that for about 2 days. And I was like, man, this is shit. Like, we're not actually helping anyone. We're working for charities and we're coming off as these like really nice, fucking helpful people who are working for all these charities and we're doing all these things. It's like, no. Those people who come to your door knocking, being like, oh man, what about raising money for this charity? No, brother, they're getting a fucking commission. 90% of the time, they don't care about the charity. They don't even know what the charity is or what it realistically represents. They're just there for a commission. And then anytime I've ever had a door-to-door salesman come and knock on my door since, I'm like, brother, I know why you're here. You don't care about the children. You are just trying to get a paycheck, which is so fair. Like, everybody needs to get paid. But it's just, it's one of those things I was like, I don't like this. And so I went back to my retail job. From there, I went and did real estate because I was like, well, I'm going to help people find their homes. I'm going to help people find their dream homes. Fucking hated that because we were essentially just getting trained on how to con people, how to get more money out of the buyers and how to get the sellers to sell for less than they wanted. And we were all it was always just, how do we get the most commission? How do we get the most money? How do we get the most this? How do we get the most that? And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, this is technically helping people, but it's not necessarily helping people in the way I want to help. And that was when I then continued down on the pathway of PT and continued to find that path. And it kind of just kept coming back to it quite a lot throughout the entire journey because it's just a matter of experiencing these different avenues or these different vehicles or vessels that then essentially led me down the path that I did go, which was the PT route, which was actually being like, okay, cool. This is helping people. This is quite literally helping change people's lives. And I'm fucking stoked with the career I've had so far with coaching, with PT, with all of that starting. I've probably worked with upwards of 1,000, if not over 1,000 people, including group fitness over my time. Not directly, but indirectly as well when you're having, 50, 60 people come into a class at any one time. And just being a part of people's journeys, watching them change their lives for the better. I talk about it all the time about how many different things the gym can actually expose people to. It exposes you to hard work. It exposes you to doing things that you don't want to do. It exposes you to discipline and building habits and building routine and just sticking to things for years on end to actually see things come to fruition. And I have always loved that. I really have. It's always been really fun to be able to help people, because for so many years, I just literally told people, I was like, hey, they're like, what do you do for work? I'm like, I stand in a gym, chat shit, and count reps. And I counted reps really poorly. Any of my old face-to-face clients can attest to that. I was horrible at counting reps, because I realized it was never realistically about the reps. It was actually about so much more. It was helping people find strength they didn't believe they had, helping people overcome obstacles they never thought possible, having people turn their dreams into reality time and time and time again, and watching them grow. I have watched people go through so many different things and come out stronger. And that has been an amazing part of the journey so far. And I think that that is something that, when you find that passion and that purpose, and realize that like the vessel you've chosen is genuinely making a difference in people's lives, it's an amazing thing. And I never started out as a PT to make money. I just started out as a PT because I enjoyed counting. I just enjoyed hanging out in a gym. And along the way, it obviously then turns into business. And with business comes finances, and with finances comes stress, and with stress comes losing sight of your passion. And over the years, there's been a few different obstacles. There's been countless mental health episodes with depression, anxiety, and just feeling lost, relationship breakdowns, alcohol and drugs throughout a majority of my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, just feeling misdirected. Finally making the decision to become sober at 26. It's been 3.5, nearly 4 years. It's nearly 4 years of being sober, coming up in January. So that will be about 26 years old I was when I decided to become sober, because I realized that alcohol was not serving any form of good purpose in my life. It was actually just taking away from the other aspects of my life that I really valued a lot more. And I know for a fact I'm not alone when I say that. I know for a fact quite a lot of people that I've known personally, or are still probably out there today, do struggle with these things, do struggle with drinking, do struggle with drugs, and feeling misaligned when they're doing them, but not necessarily knowing how to stop or how to get away from it. It can be hard. It really can be. Finances, as I said, are always one of those things that just up and down, and trying to get ahead in life in one aspect and build a future for yourself. And then also realizing that when you focus so much more on the finance side of things, then all of a sudden the vessel that you've chosen, i.e. business, becomes less about helping people and more about, well, I need to get X amount of dollars. Well, how do I get X amount of dollars? It's by getting this many people through. It's like, okay, cool. It becomes less about the genuine help that you want to give people, and it becomes a little bit more about, well, I just need more people. And that has been something that I've had to battle with my most of my PT career, is like setting yourself up in business to actually get ahead in life and build a successful life for yourself, but also then still wanting to be able to actually help as many people as you can. And just sometimes they don't always go hand in hand. And I can see why people lose their direction when it comes to the financial aspect of things, because either they become very successful and they start to make a lot of money, and then all of a sudden they forget why they actually got into it in the first place, which I'm absolutely guilty of at certain points. And then you'll always get a bit of a gentle reminder. It's like, no, this is not why you got into it. This is a healthy byproduct of that, is, making money. Everybody needs to make money. Everybody needs to get ahead. Everybody needs to pay their bills and survive and live a life that brings them fulfillment. But it's not at the expense of what your soul's purpose should be, I think. And that's definitely been like a big lesson for me this year, is almost losing sight a little bit and prioritizing more of the business side of things. And then when business hasn't necessarily been going as well as I would like, starting to be like, well, fuck, what am I even doing here? Like, what am I actually doing? Why am I continuing to do this? Why am I continuing to put in the work, put in the effort, do the things I'm doing if I'm just not seeing it pay off in that moment in time? And that's been something I've been wrestling with quite a lot, especially as I turned 30, all these little existential crises and things like that. And yeah, as I've mentioned, the core essence, the very basis of what I believed my purpose to be in life is kind of utilizing all of these events to actually help others. And this is probably why I speak so openly online about the things I have gone through. And sometimes people might look at that and they'll be like, you don't need to share these things. You don't need to talk about this. You don't need to post about this. For quite a few years, I had a couple of mentors who literally told me, don't use anything to do with your mental health as a part of your job, your career, your anything. Don't use it. And I was always a little bit lost by that notion, because I was like, well, I've overcome some pretty hectic things, and they've not been a weakness, they've actually been a strength. And then that strength has then allowed me to actually help others in similar situations, or even not similar situations, but along their own journeys. And it's relatable, and it's the reality of life. People do go through these things. And if they realize that there is a beacon of light at the end of the tunnel, it might help somebody come through. And the amount of times I've received messages from people, the amount of times I've had conversations with people, the amount of times that I've just had someone mention something to me and they're like, man, this post really helped. Or you talking about this so openly has allowed me to talk about it openly. Or you posting about going back to a psychiatrist or a psychologist has helped me to go and start talking to a psychologist. Or I started journaling because of you. Or any of these things outweigh anything anyone's ever told me about not sharing my journey. And I've been very vocal about sharing my journey from quite a young age, even before I was a PT. Not for any other reason than I just felt, well, if somebody was sharing their things that they had gone through, it might have helped me. So all I wanted to do was just be that support light for somebody else. And I realized that it's not a matter of always talking about these things because you want people to feel pity or you want them to whatever. It's a matter of utilizing the experiences that I've had to then further aid other people. And that might not even come down to anything I've actually directly experienced, but it can just be simply as something as simple as holding space for another person that then allows them to feel comfortable enough to go and do things for themselves or go and seek better for themselves across their careers. I've helped countless young blokes get into PT, which has been amazing because it's then allowed them to directly impact others as well. So now the impact that I'm having isn't just necessarily directly correlated to just them, but then it's also cascading down the line into the clients that they're working with and that they're helping. And it's amazing to see. It's really fucking cool because it just has this massive flow-on effect. And I put a post up on Instagram the other day talking about how a rising tide lifts all ships, and we should always be seeking those above us to continually push ourselves and do better, but we should also then always be looking around for others around us. The terminology beneath us, because no one is beneath us, but somebody who may not necessarily be where you are right now or where you have been, but might need a hand up along the way. And I think that's really crucial, is being able to, not just look above to who you can use for help, but also to look below and see who you can help lift up with you along the journey. And I really believe that is something that is a little bit misdirected when it does come to seeking mentors and seeking advice from others and things like that. It's a bit overlooked, I would say. Samuel's decided to chime in today. And with that, it's building a life around purpose and losing sight of it time and time again. Genuinely. It's just losing track of where you actually want to go and what it represents and how it looks. And it's not a matter of I've never once stopped caring about helping people. It has always just come down to the scoreboard sometimes becoming a little bit louder than the purpose itself, as I mentioned, with relation to some of the business aspect of things, and confusing the performance of my business with the value of the mission. So when business hasn't necessarily been going well, confusing that with, well, I'm not helping anyone. When in reality, I was still helping plenty of people. And we are sometimes our own worst enemies when it comes to this. We always seem to pick apart the things we're doing, and we always seem to look at the things we're not doing, or we're not achieving, or we're not necessarily where we want to be, instead of focusing on where we have come from, what we have done, where we have been. And I'm quite literally living a life now that I wouldn't have even been able to dream about 5 years ago. But then sometimes losing sight of that, because things may not necessarily be where I want them to be. And that can be hard. It can be hard to sort of regather yourself and realize, okay, well, what is it that you're actually doing? Where are you actually going? What is it you want to do? And having the ego come into play. Your ego is a big thing throughout this entire process. I've had to wrestle with my ego so many times over the years, and realize tying my worth to a dollar value, or tying my worth to the amount of clients I was working with at any one particular time, instead of realizing that my worth is so much more than that. And it's less about the people I'm working with directly at this particular point in time, and more about the people I've helped my entire life, my entire career. Whether that be directly through coaching or mentoring or something like that, or indirectly through social media, or just through conversations with people in day-to-day life. Now there's coaches and other people's clients who I haven't necessarily directly worked with, but I have had some form of impact on. And I know that that is the exact same thing for me. There are people who haven't necessarily been my coach or my mentor or whatever, but they have directly and indirectly impacted me with the things that they've done or spoken about or showcased, or the way in which they approach certain things. And it's always looking at that and trying to recenter yourself around that, and a little bit less around, okay, well, what is directly happening right now, and how does that look from a metrics perspective? Because now in the rise of, online coaching and metrics, like track this, track that, track this, track that. And I'm like, I'm all for that. I love the business side of things. I love business tracking and metrics and keeping a record of it all and all the rest of it as well. But at some point, if your mission and your purpose in life is genuinely to help other people, sometimes the metrics don't necessarily reflect exactly what is happening. And we know as coaches that there are so many different wins that our clients can achieve that aren't necessarily tied to some form of metric. It's not a scale weight metric. It's not how much extra weight they're lifting in the gym. It's not any of that. It could actually be indirectly tied to all of it. It could be, and again, I did a post on this week. I was discussing around all the internal wins. When you see a client and they may have lost weight. Now that is the physical thing that they have done. That is a physical metric that we can look at. It's a tangible outcome. Let's say they've lost 10 kilos. They're the best shape they've ever been in their life. But it's not even about the 10 kilos they've lost. It's about the fact that at one point in time, when they were at work and they were in a work meeting, they would never talk up. They never wanted the spotlight on them. They would shy away from having any form of input. And now they're talking up. Now they're running meetings. Now they're looking for promotions, or they're getting promotions, or they're even more than that. They're going and pushing themselves further along other avenues of their life. Now, is it the 10 kilos they lost that has done that for them? No, but it is the confidence that has come as a byproduct that is allowing them to then go and do these things. The aura shift, just the vibrance you can see in people when they change internally. And you can't track that. You can't show that on a progress photo. You can't show that in a 30 to 60 second reel on fucking Instagram. There are so many wins that will never, ever be tied to something physical that you can see that just matter so much more. And that is a hill I will die on every single day of the week. I've been caught up over the years, especially from a marketing perspective with business, in being like, fuck, I don't have enough transformation photos to show people. It's like, or I don't have enough results to show. And I'm like, well, I've got countless results. I've got hundreds of people who've gone to the platform for the first time or hit PBs or nationals, world events, qualifying for different things. Fucking not even to do with powerlifting, external events, marathons, half marathons, high rocks events, fucking obstacle courses, even things that aren't physical within their jobs, everything like that. And it's like, well, how do you showcase some of the internal aspects of things sometimes? And that can be really, really hard. But I'm going to continue to work on trying to highlight that for people, because we are now just in a world where it's all flashy, it's all quick, it's all showing. And I think there's been a little bit of a pendulum shift to a degree, especially with social media at the moment, where we are seeing the likes of longer form content come back into play. We are seeing the likes of real connection and personality coming back into play. And it's less about the fucking 15-second video that every single person's making that's just following a trend, which they're great. They're really good for vanity metrics, great for likes, great for shares, great for all of this. But when it comes down to it, it's not necessarily helping someone directly or indirectly. And that'll be a big focus point for me with business over the next probably 6 to 12 months, is working out more ways to highlight that with people and highlight that client journey with them. The internal shifts, I think, is a really big one. And I would love to see more coaches focusing on that. And I've actually been fortunate enough to have conversations with coaches of late as I've been talking with some things. And they're all saying the exact same thing. They all say, yeah, it's really hard for us to show that. Because we all agree. We all know it. Anybody who's gone through any form of physical transformation themselves, they know it. The confidence that they show up in when they're wearing a fucking new outfit, or they're wearing a new dress. It's the dress they've been trying to fit into for 10 years and all of a sudden they can, or they're able to now run around with their kids in the park and play sport and do whatever it is that they love to do that isn't to do with the gym. That's the real shift. That's the real purpose, is helping people along their journeys in their life. And you can tie your identity to so many different things. I definitely have tied my identity to coaching over the time. One of my journal entries this week, if I'm not a coach, what am I? This week, I wrote that. And I sat with it. I had to. I was like, well, if I'm not a coach, what am I? Who am I? There's been countless times where I've had identities stripped away, relationships ending, or leaving different jobs, different gyms. It's like, well, who am I? Who actually am I? You know, there was a point when I left Nexus and I quite literally, I sat there and I spoke to my partner at the time and I said to her, I was like, well, if I'm not Josh, the powerlifting Nexus coach, who the fuck am I? Who am I? Why would people want to listen to me? As if my worth and my identity was tied to a business or a thing. And that was, it's a hard thing to ask yourself. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I know for a fact there's probably countless people who feel the same in their jobs, in their careers, in their life. Parents, you know, if you're not a parent, so many parents. If you're not a parent, who are you? And some people can't answer that question. I watched a YouTube video. I can't even remember who it was or whatever, but the context essentially surrounding it was this guy would go around and interview people and he would go, who are you? And they would start to list off all these tangible things. I'm a mother, I'm an accountant, I'm this, I'm that. And they're like, no. Who are you? And they start to list off all these things again. It's like, no, stop. At the core essence of who you are as a person, who are you? What is it that makes you you? When you strip away all those identities, when you strip away all these labels and all the rest of it, like, who actually are you? And if you're listening to this, ask yourself that question. journal. If you journal it. Ask yourself, if you strip away all of your identities, if you're a coach, who are you if you're not a coach? If you run a business, who are you if you don't run that business? Because we seem to just tie ourselves up into these labels and these identities that aren't necessarily who we are. It's just a part of who we are. I'm not the core identity of who I am isn't a coach, but coaching is a vessel that I use as a part of my life's purpose. So that's a deep question for someone if they want to really dive into that. It's an interesting one, trust me. Because you just have to sit with it, and it's not an easy thing to do sometimes, to question who you are as a person. But when you can actually start to break it down and come into the understanding of who you are, and I've been very fortunate at the moment. I did a podcast episode a couple of weeks ago with Meg, and we would, if anybody hasn't listened to that episode, it would be episode 24. And part of the work that I've actually been doing with her is like quite literally like stripping away those identities and looking at the core essence of who I actually am and what my purpose is. And it's been very fortunate, again, like life always has a way of bringing people into your orbit when you need them. And it couldn't have been more perfectly timed to have Meg come into my awareness, into my life, and help me with a lot of the things that she's working with me on at the moment. And there'll probably be a lot of aspects of that I will continue to talk about as the journey continues, as I continue to work through these things. As I said at the very start of this episode, I'm not perfect. I don't have these things figured out. I'm not sitting here at the top of Mount Olympus talking down to people and being like, this is what you need to do and this is how you find this. No. I am simply a man who is trying to fucking figure this shit out still to this day. I'm 30 years old and I'm still trying to figure out the full intended life purpose I have. And I will not probably figure it out for another 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 years if I kick around for that long. But one day I will be able to look back and in hindsight and be like, this is who I was. If I can start to essentially establish aspects of that now as I continue to progress through life, then I think that will be a life well lived. But yeah, none of what I'm speaking about today is me thinking I've got it figured all, thinking I've got it all figured out, because I fucking don't. Nor should you, probably. But hopefully this does. Some of these aspects of things some of these things are just helping you start to sort of piece this together, because yeah, I used to think purpose was primarily about what I could build. Now I think it is equally about the person I become while building it, and who I am becoming, and what my daily practices are, and who that actually is at the fundamental essence of who I am and my values every single day. Finding what my values are. If you don't know, this is actually a really good practice that somebody can that someone can do. If a lot of this is like a little bit heavy, just start with what you value. What are your fundamental core values in life? If you don't know, and I did this work with ChatGPT to help me establish everything when we went through this like huge, rigorous process of, okay, well, I really want to establish and sit with what my core values are and start to piece it together, and don't just go, what are my core values? And then just take whatever it says. Like, you want to fucking crash test them, test the fuck out of them. What are the things that you will never waver on? What are aspects of your life that you just cannot sway from? Find those core values and then build your life around those. That will be the starting framework to what you can actually do for the future with that. It's actually really cool. It's really, once you start to realize that, and once you have a look at that overall, you then realize, okay, cool. This is where the framework is. This is what I can start to essentially build from that. And your core values, my core values are going to potentially be very different. It doesn't make yours wrong, mine right. It doesn't make yours right and mine wrong. It just means that we essentially value different things. And I think that is a beautiful thing about human beings, is we can have all of these different values, beliefs, and all the rest of it, but we can still all fundamentally come together. And I think having an understanding about other people's values and beliefs, and even asking someone, why do you value that? What is it about that that you value above something else? And then when you hear people's answers, you're like, wow, okay, cool. That's their human lived experience, and that's why they value that, and that is perfect for them. Doesn't take away from yours, doesn't take away from theirs. It's just different. And I think that's really cool. I think it's really good that we can have these different aspects of things. As I said, like realizing, to me, it was a big realization that my purpose was never just about coaching, but it was so much more than that. It was physical strength, mental resilience, emotional honesty, spiritual curiosity, personal responsibility, relationships, philosophy, character, communication, helping other people navigate uncertainty. It was all of these different things that made me me, and trying to piece together how that all worked in the upper echelon of life. Podcast, as I said, I love this fucking podcast. I lost, and there's been times where I've lost sight of this podcast. There's been times where I realized, I was like, well, I'm not necessarily making the impact that I want to make with it. But then I realized how much of an impact I had already made with it, and how many people have taken value from this. And that it kept me going. It really has, in so many different times. And just continuing to broaden those horizons and what that means, and how I can continue to try and have a greater impact on a larger scale, and just helping people is quite literally just helping people, and establishing that, like, your everyday strength philosophy is, strength is not just physical, it is mental, emotional, and built through character. It's developing a deeper understanding of what my original purpose was over time. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without actually having all of the little things along the way, the little road bumps, the little fucking hiccups, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. None of it would have essentially, like, it's all served its purpose to help me find my purpose. And I know that everybody who's listening to this will be able to look at that themselves. They'll be able to look back over their last 5-10 years and realize, okay, that relationship nearly destroyed me, but it made me so much stronger, and it made me be able to speak about boundaries better, and it made me be able to actually articulate myself to the person that I love a little bit more. And now I'm with the person that I will spend the rest of my life with, or now I'm married with children. And you hear about that all the time. People who were like, this is the person I thought I was going to marry, and that ended, and it destroyed me, and I had to rebuild from the bottom. And now I'm married with 2 kids with the love of my life, and we're living in a house that I never would have dreamt of owning, and we have a dog or a cat or whatever. And you're like, damn, okay. Life doesn't end when one potential aspect of your identity gets stripped away. Life actually just gets a new chance to expand and grow. And we can look at that through everything: career, jobs, hobbies, relationships, all of it. It'll be probably a continual work in progress for many, many people to truly find their purpose. And these are like a little bit of a practical aspect of things that I wanted to try and implement into today, along with, sitting with and asking, what your values are. What do you value? Ask yourself that. Write it. Sit down with it. Instead of asking, what job should you do, ask what kind of contribution makes your life more meaningful. And start to do that. When you actually want to trace, so when we're looking through our life, trace the reoccurring thread. So the thing that continually pops up for you along the journey, because most people will have this one thing that they kind of keep coming back to. And they may not even be able to actually look at it in full and be like, oh, I kept coming back to this. But then when you actually sit with it and have a good think, it's like, okay, well, where does my life keep leading me back? Look across your life and ask, what subjects or problems do you continually return to? What do people naturally seek your help with? What experiences have changed how you see the world? And what work leaves you feeling more alive even when it is difficult? For me, it was more or less about strength, service, personal development, and helping people turn adversity into capability. Utilizing coaching, utilizing training and nutrition as a vehicle or a vessel for that. This was a big one, and this kind of ties in with all of the mental health stuff. And it was probably the core message of what some of my previous people in my life had meant to me about, not using mental health and things like that. It's not necessarily about using your pain and turning it into your identity. It's using your pain and then asking yourself, what have I survived, learned, or rebuilt that could make somebody else feel less alone? That was what worked for me. And then being able to utilize that. And then it's also separating the purpose from its current vehicle, as mentioned. So finish these. These are some journal prompts. If anybody wants to do them, please feel free. You can share them with me if you like. I'd love to have a chat with you about it. So the contribution you care about is the vehicle you're currently using is other vehicles or vessels that you could explore are. So if you're intended, for me, for example, as an example, with my purpose just being helping people, there is so many different vessels I could use to help people that don't have anything to do with coaching. I could go and become a teacher. I could go and become a nurse. Say I could go and become a doctor, but I'm not going to study for 12 years or whatever the fuck that is, not a chance. But for somebody else, that could be a really viable option. Or if I'd become an EP or a physio or an osteo or something like that, what other vessels can you explore? And then it doesn't necessarily tie your purpose to one particular job or avenue. It opens it up for you. And it's just, as I've said throughout, and the sort of the theme throughout the entirety of this is it's not necessarily knowing your purpose in full and having it down to the finite detail, and that's the only way in which you can actually explore it. It will be something that you come to, potentially lose along the way and come back to, and lose and come back and grow, and it expands and it changes your perspective on what you actually believe it is as you continue to grow. So it's about utilizing that as almost a foundational framework or a basis of a building, the foundation, and then building upon it. Sometimes you have to go into a building and you have to renovate some of the rooms. You finish a fucking job. I'm sure chippies understand this shit more than I do. Finish a job and you've got to go in and do a couple of little touch-ups along the way, just to ensure that it continues to progress the way in which you actually need it to. And then understanding that it will still have seasons. It may look a little bit different as you continue to go through life. It might look like ambition and building. In others, it might just be surviving, healing, or caring for the family or for your family. It has seasons. It's not always a linear approach. Nothing in life is, unfortunately. It'd be great if it was. And yeah, I'm going to be leaving you with 5 questions. These 5 questions were essentially derived from what I wanted people to take away from this. So there's been quite a lot of questions that you can ask yourself. As these are 5 that I think will help you the most in terms of practical applicability once you finish this podcast episode. When in my life have I felt most useful? What experience have I lived that could help someone else? What keeps calling me back even after I ignore it? Am I pursuing meaning or merely chasing validation? What is one purposeful action I can take this week? Take those, answer them, and understand. You will probably feel very lost on the journey of finding your purpose. You will. So, the fucking gurus on Instagram who'll talk about finding your purpose and finding your meaning in life and just running with that forever and never understanding that. And then when you feel a little bit lost or a little bit sidetracked or you get pushed off along the way and you're like, fuck, there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. You're not at all. Trust me. As I said, I'm still continually refining this stuff as I go. And everybody I talk to around me and have these conversations with more and more is very much the same. So you're not alone in those regards. Because you don't need to know your one great purpose today. Maybe the pressure is part of what is keeping you stuck. Perhaps your responsibility right now is simply to pay attention to what makes you feel alive, to what life keeps trying to teach you, and to where you can be useful. I have found my purpose. I've lost sight of it. I've questioned it, and I've returned to it more than once. I'm sure I will refine it again, but the thread is becoming clearer. I want to use my experience, my voice, and the work I do to help people become stronger. Not just in the gym, but in the moments life asks them who they really are. You may not find your purpose in one defining moment. You may find it in the pattern of what you continually choose to return to. That is today's episode. Thank you. If you've listened to this, thank you very much. If you took anything from it, please reach out, send me a message, let me know. If it helped in any capacity, share it with a friend. Please share it around. Like, comment, subscribe. If you listen on Spotify, subscribe to the fucking show. If you listen on YouTube, please subscribe. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, also please subscribe. It's slowly growing. But what I found recently is with the growth of the show, the more it continues to grow, the more it actually starts to, looking at all the metrics and looking at the statistics of it and things like that. The show has actually really started to expand on explore pages and things like that. And that only comes as a result of people listening, people liking, people subscribing, or people sharing, or whatever avenue they're actually utilizing. It's less and less being like just subscribers and people who are already listening to the show regularly. And it's actually started to become a little bit more expansive than that, which is really fucking cool, to be completely honest. Like, that's actually been really cool to see that growth. And I continue to hope to have the growth in that and utilizing this podcast as a vehicle, as a vessel for delivering what I essentially have claimed as my soul's purpose of just trying to help other people. So I've got a couple of good guests that I'm trying to still get locked in over the next couple of weeks. And if anyone listening to this has someone that they recommend, or someone you want me to interview or ask questions to, or whatever, send them through to me. Or if you know someone that you think would be fantastic for the show and you know them directly, send them a message and say, hey, I think you'd be great on this podcast. I've had actually quite a few people message me and go, oh, like, could I be a guest on the podcast? And I'm like, yes, you can. Like, that's actually great. I would love that. So it's not always about me finding them. Sometimes it's about them finding me. And I think that that's a really fucking cool thing too. So if you have anyone who you could recommend, if you have anybody who you feel would be a good fit for the show, or you want to hear more of, or their message, or something that you believe that they could attribute and have, send them through. Beyond that, I do hope everybody has a fantastic day today. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will catch you on the next one.